justice be served.
Hi, everyone. This is Amelia Duran, your host in the Porthole to Justice. And it is May 4th, 2018. I almost said April. Okay. So I'm doing a third interview with a citizen from San Mateo County. And he can tell you a little bit about himself more, but this is regarding the human trafficking and some of the corruption there in Silicon Valley. You know, I had previously done some shows on the breach, I think the leak, and on Facebook, and some of the targeting and the algorithms and all of that. And so much of this is coming out of Silicon Valley. And speaking to some of these individuals personally, it's kind of shocking what's coming out of this area. So there's that. And I just want to, I've been doing this for so long now. Oh, stand by. Hi. Can you, Mark? Let's see. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I was just going to cite some statistics. I've been a little bit tongue-tied today.
That's okay.
There in 2016, Global Slavery Index estimates that include U.S. citizens and immigrants. 50,700 people are victims of human trafficking, according to the Department of State Statistics. There's approximately 244,000 American children and youth that are at risk for sex trafficking each year. So I posted these statistics to my blog, Porthole to Justice, and it's pretty alarming. And this is a 3-part. I think this is the third interview I've done about human trafficking and what's coming out of the area of Silicon Valley and Facebook and the targeting and the data breaches. All of it is really concerning. And recently, first of all, I want to introduce you to my listeners. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, back in, this all started, this incident, Operation Dollhouse, was back in April 21st, 2007.
Yeah.
And, I'm 63 years old, and at that time I was busy, raising my teenage boys and just trying to make a living and kind of like in the doldrums about, politics in San Mateo County, because in San Mateo County, the veterans issues are really, really bad here, and they still are. But so I got involved, and when I started investigating, really in 2013, I found out that this wasn't just a simple, two top law enforcement agents of San Mateo County, the sheriff and undersheriff, going to some prostitute, like legal prostitution, which I'm against anyhow, but it's in counties in Nevada. But when I started researching it, I found out that in Clark County, Nevada, which is Las Vegas, prostitution is illegal. There's only a couple counties in Nevada that have legal prostitution. Well, and then I started researching it more and more, and I started finding out that these women were not just women, there were children involved in this, and it was a sex slavery residence. I hate to even use the word brothel, because brothel refers to prostitution. This was an actual sex slavery that two of our top law enforcement agents were caught in.
Well, and I just want to add something, if you interject really quickly before you go further.
Sure.
You know, I have been reporting for years on the targeting, and I counsel targeted individuals. And what I've come to realize is that a lot of the targeting is specifically to get some of these people, you know, really down low and more vulnerable positions of poverty and, you know, being very desperate. It makes them more vulnerable to human trafficking. And a lot of it is contrived state by state, city by city. And I've done a lot of interviews over the years, and it's always the same story.
Right. Well, you know, I sent you that link about Dr. Alexis Kennedy. She wrote a report about human sex trafficking of minors in Las Vegas, Nevada. Just because, you know, Nevada, Las Vegas itself, even though, you know, it's illegal for so-called prostitution, this is the hub, really, for sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. And most top law enforcement agents know about this, and that's why a lot of people, both, you know, not law enforcement necessarily, but law enforcement knows that if they get caught there, they're just going to be released. And because in Las Vegas right now, currently, I had a quote from the Vice Department of Las Vegas, and you can verify this. I asked them, I said, if, you know, a police officer catches a man who's basically called a John with an illegal prostitute, what happens? And the Vice Squad replied back to me of Las Vegas saying that the prostitute will be arrested, but the John will be let go because they don't have the resources to prosecute them, which I think is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So that's right there why I think our current appointed sheriff, Carlos Bolanos, went to Las Vegas because of that reason alone. If you get caught, you're not going to be prosecuted because, you know, there's too much red tape as far as the Las Vegas police say.
No, and it's such a problem that, you know, some of these minors and undocumented individuals that are coming in, they have even, I mean, there's no recourse there at all, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, let me explain what Dr. Farley, who is a expert on human trafficking, along with Dr. Kennedy and Terry Miller, they all have they come to the same conclusion or the same statements that, you know, they don't have any recourse because most of these sex trafficking, you know, granted there's a lot of minors in the United States that are actual American citizens, but this human sex trafficking is mainly from other countries like Asia, all parts of Asia and Mexico, Central America and South America. And when they get what Dr. Farley has told me and all the other two experts on this is that they approach these people in these small villages and small towns and say, do you want to go to the United States? We can get you in there. And you can become an American citizen and you can get a job working in the hotel industry or get a job and become very wealthy. And, you know, they promise them all this. And basically all it is a ruse to get them here. And then once they're here, they realize, oh my gosh, I'm now a sex slave, and they can't escape because if they do, they've been told that once they get here, that if you ever run away, we'll kill your family in the countries of origin. You know, be it Korea, Vietnam, the Philippines, or Mexico.
And that's one of the ways. That's one of the ways, but it's a lot more clearly defined state by state, city by city, when you have huge pockets in areas that have contrived poverty. You create a vulnerable class of people,
right,
that are more open to being, doing things that might compromise them or their family. And, a lot of what we see in some of these areas where there's contrived poverty is we're seeing, the statistics shooting up way high for human trafficking. And my personal experience, how I became an activist, was I took my personal case all the way to federal court. And I had considerable amounts of evidence in regards to the targeting, and some of, what I realized is a lot of these women that get targeted in the holding cells, in the jail, the other women actually recruit other women. We can help you pay off these tickets, or my boyfriend, he can introduce you to someone that can help you make some money, and we can get you out of this mess.
Yes.
And that's...
That is what Dr. Farley also explained to me, and always, when our lengthy talks, she gave the same scenario you just did. We can help you. We can get you out. And, a lot of these... I took this all the way... I took this all the way to court, the federal courts. And that's where I learned that the judicial's complicit, law enforcement is actively targeting and doing these things to especially single women with children. Yeah. Yes.
And all of this ties together.
Well, could I go back to the Operation Dollhouse story that I'm really, not story, I should say, issue. Yeah. Because story sounds like something I'm making up. But may I just touch on a couple points on that?
Yeah, I want to get to that, and I want to also get to you had attended a local community meeting, I guess, and I was hoping you'd share about that as well.
Right. Yes, last night there is a event in Pacifica, California, and it's been hosted by one of the candidates for Congress in San Mateo County, and she brought up how she's going to make every effort she can to bring out this problem that is everywhere. It's in San Mateo County. It's in every county in the United States, but she wants to really bring this forward because of what happened with our two top law enforcement agents in San Mateo County. Mm-hmm. And her name is Christina, and I would not want to pronounce her last name because it's Osana, I believe. Mm-hmm. She's a newcomer to politics, and she's a great-granddaughter of the president of the Philippines. Her great-grandfather was president of the Philippines at the time. So she's aware of human trafficking just because of her family heritage and living in the Philippines and seeing how, women and children are being exploited for human trafficking.
Mm-hmm. And the same as in India and other countries, we see they've had to deal with this type of issue for much longer than we have. I'm sure she's very much aware of it,
She is. She's well versed in it. She's a very intelligent lady that has taken on a big chance to try to become our next congresswoman of San Mateo County.
Well, I hope it works out, and we need to be more proactive about voting these corrupt individuals out of places of power.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you coming on the show. So go ahead. I
Sure.
didn't mean to detract you from Operation Dollhouse.
The Operation Dollhouse issue?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I spoke to one of the social workers who was there that night, and again, this is a conversation I had with Terry, and I asked her. I said, "What actually happened?" And she said that night when they raided the place, it was the FBI and 4 other law enforcement agencies. It was the Las Vegas Metro Police, Clark County Sheriff, ICE, and the Internal Revenue Service. They confiscated 3,500 ecstasy pills, I believe $25,000 in cash, and that's where our 2 top law enforcement agents were at that night. And our current appointed sheriff, Carlos Bolanos, I mean, here he is in charge of San Mateo County by an appointment only, not by election. And he's going to be facing a tough election come June 5th because of this is being brought back up, and it should be. Here he is caught inside of a sex slave residence, where 3,500 pills of ecstasy were there, and human sex trafficking slaves. And I mean, it's so unbelievable that, almost like if I try to sell this story to a Hollywood scriptwriter, they would laugh at me and say, this is too much fiction. But it's all facts. And just to get back to what I was talking to Terry, one of the social workers, she said that there's no trust with the young ladies and children that were there that night, that they were all handcuffed and they were being processed to be charged with prostitution. And so Terry had told me that when they brought the women and children to her safe house, that night, they were all handcuffed, the women and children. And Terry asked the Las Vegas PD police officer that was there, give me your handcuff key so I can unhandcuff these people, these young ladies and children. And he said, well, I don't have a key. I can't find my key. So she went out and got her Leatherman tool out of her car and unhandcuffed all these women, young women and children. And they were so afraid because here they're thinking, hey, I'm saved by the police, and why am I being handcuffed? And so once they released, she got them out, they were free to go, and Terry asked them, why don't you stay with me, and I'll get you a place to stay, and we'll get you all squared away. And a lot of them couldn't speak that well of English, and they had a translator there, and the women and children were just petrified. They said, no, I thought I was safe, and yet I was handcuffed. And a police officer didn't unhandcuff me. It was you, and so they dispersed, and the only one that was really protected was a 15-year-old Latina girl, or I should say Hispanic young lady that was put in protective services and was helped through the process of getting her life back together.
Wow. So was that the only minor involved?
Well, there were more, but the one that Terry made quite clear to me, because there were a couple safe houses where the women were brought in, because there were like 3 brothels that night that were all run by one family. Everyone thinks, there was Operation Dollhouse. That meant, the Mexican mob, the Italian mob, the Irish mob. It was just one family called the Keys family, which is spelled Keyes. He was a Caucasian man, looked like, from what picture I've seen of him, he looks like he was in his late 50s or early 60s. And his common-law wife was of Asian descent. I believe she was Chinese. And her extended family were the ones that were running the sex slave house. Mm-hmm. And that's where people have really got to understand, because of the local newspaper, one of the local newspapermen told me, he was one of the publishers, he goes, Mark, I'm not ruining a career on I'm not ruining a career politician over the fact that it didn't say 3474 Eldon Street. And then I mentioned it to him. I said, Dave, you got to understand, there was one family involved that rotated the children and the women. Mm-hmm. So I've been told it was 3474 Eldon Street, but the FBI documents actually said a sex minor was involved. Now, was that at 3474 Eldon Street? Verbally, I was told by a social worker it was. But again, that night there were three brothels, I shouldn't say brothels, sex slave houses that were raided that night. And our sheriff, Carlos G. Bolanos, was inside the brothel, and he was caught by the FBI. Caught, detained, and then released.
So originally, Mark, I had done a little bit of research about, about Operation Dollhouse, and I had broadcasted a show regarding some of the articles that were published just based on what I'd read. But I understand now that these articles were not accurate.
No, not at all. Not at all. What's really funny there, and I won't mention the newspaper. I call them advertising papers because they're free papers, and they get income from the county of San Mateo to run ads, like lien notices, public notices, that kind of stuff. So their income comes mainly from San Mateo County, and up to $1 million a year, divided by a few papers, or again, advertising papers. And one of the there's quite a few of these little so-called independent online newspapers and paper newspapers that one says this and one says that. Well, the gentleman that I was speaking to that said, "Oh, I'm not ruining a man's career because we don't know the sex minor was in that residence." But the issue is that the other subsidiary of the same newspaper, because it's an umbrella under one newspaper group, actually stated that Lieutenant Karen Hughes and Officer Bill Cassell of the Las Vegas Metro PD placed both of the sheriff and undersheriff inside the illegal brothel. Inside. And so, if you're outside in a car in a limo, like Carlos Bolanos has been saying for the last 11 years, why would the FBI go outside to the street and detain you, catch you, detain you, and then release you? If you're not inside the illegal sex slave house, why would he been detained by the FBI? So that's where there's other newspapers or advertising papers in San Mateo County that says, "Oh, Carlos Bolanos said he was in the limo," and it's just comical because there's a statement from the Las Vegas Metro PD stating that he was inside the home,
at the time. So this originally actually occurred back in 2007, but
right.
But this is an issue again in San Mateo County because Carlos Bolanos is actually running for sheriff again.
Well, he never ran for sheriff. The former sheriff is very interesting. He retired on a medical, and I believe it's because of his heart. So he retired fully on a full medical retirement. And so on July 12th, 2016, prior to July 12th, 2016, I think it was the end of June or 1st of July, he told the Board of Supervisors, "Oh, I'm going out on a medical retirement, I highly recommend Carlos G. Bolanos to succeed me, and please appoint him to sheriff. And that's a whole other story, because the Board of Supervisors technically did an illegal action by not notifying the public of the fact that they were going to vote on him to become the new sheriff, meaning Carlos G. Bolanos. That was July 12, 2016. So Carlos Bolanos was never elected. He was appointed, and that's the big difference, and that's why on June 5th, 2018, the election's there's an election. But the big issue here in San Mateo County is San Mateo County is a county that votes 65% by mail. So our ballots are going out on May 7th. And the election technically is going to be over soon, because 65% vote by mail. And that's why we're trying to get this word out as much as we can. And we've had an article just the other day from the Palo Alto Daily Post. It was dated, what's the date on this one? May 2nd, 2018. And it states on the front page of the Palo Alto Daily Post, Sheriff talks about Vegas incident. And there's the whole story, and that's the Palo Alto Daily Post. They're the only ones that really did any real, came out with the real story.
So
it still was kind of vague.
So you attended this community meeting. What would you say, is the public generally of San Mateo generally aware of what occurred and who he is?
We're probably the richest county in the United States. And what's funny about this county, and I know every county has their issues, and believe me, I want to make a clear statement here. I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement. I know people in the ATF. I know people at the California Highway Patrol, and I know people in different police departments in San Mateo County, including the sheriff's office. And so I want to make it real clear that I'm not one of these anti-police. If anything, I thank them every day for the good police and the good law enforcement doing a good job. But the thing is most people are real complacent here. It's a really funny thing. Here we are, one of the wealthiest counties percentage-wise in the nation, and yet people are going, "Who's Carlos Bolanos?" And I go, "Oh, he's our sheriff." Since when? And there's a lot of people that are very not in the know. It's really funny. I just don't get it. You figure that one of the richest counties in the United States really kind of clueless on what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and that's why we're lucky that we have somebody like you, and the other candidate for Congress is really starting to take the bull by the horn and talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really trying to expose the systemic issue that is in the system, because that's part of the problem. And I think the first thing that we can do as individuals to be proactive is vote these people out, research who they are, who they're involved with. So, some of this human trafficking, it's deep. It's deep. And it's such an issue. And then we see the Democrats, it almost, wherever, if you look at like San Francisco, California, everywhere basically that voted Democrat, if you see what is going on with the poverty and the homelessness issue, and you see them wanting to, bring in more undocumented immigrants, and you understand the human trafficking issue, it really starts to paint a clear picture.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'm I'm trying to highlight, as well as the fact that 60 to 70% of the children that are in foster care and come out of foster care are victims of human trafficking or become human trafficked.
Yes.
And part of the problem is the American Safe Families Act. They give incentives to rehome children into foster placements. And a lot of these new laws that are being passed are really not regulating who these foster parents are. And a lot of times, we're finding that these children are being placed in group homes or homes with registered pedophiles or human traffickers.
Right. Now, did you ever speak to Victoria Belfer by any chance?
No, I didn't.
She was. It's funny how you say about the pedophile thing. She wrote an article. Was really involved in, along with Michael Stogner, getting Dr. William Ayers prosecuted for being a pedophile with young boys in San Mateo County. And until she wrote an article in People magazine, and she was really, along with Michael Stogner, were instrumental into getting Dr. William Ayers put in prison, and he ended up dying in prison. And he was a psychiatrist that was thought of highly in San Mateo County. And when the court system said, "Well, this little boy has some emotional issues, we'll send him to Dr. William Ayers," and over many years, he was raping him and abusing these children. And it was like, well, how crazy is that? Where it wasn't, it was the court system of San Mateo County that were appointing these children to go see him, and it's just this is kind of like was an eye opener many years ago. I think it was about 6 years ago that all this came about. So our court systems have really hurt our children here.
Yeah, I recall that case, and I believe it's profiled in the Porthole to Justice blog on Facebook. You can go into the photo archives, and you can research some of these stories that we're talking about, and look at the memes, which are kind of really breaks it down in a really simple way to understand it. But the thing that I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. And when I left there, I think in 2017, there were 1,000 registered pedophiles as licensed foster care placements.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go to missingkidsla.org, there's 800 children that are missing, unaccounted for. They just lost them.
Well, another thing that our current sheriff did to our county is we had this civil grand jury back in 2010. He was under sheriff at the time, meaning Carlos Bolanos. And the civil grand jury stated that the biggest mistake the sheriff's office did was eliminate a program called SHOP. It was called Sexual Habitual Offender Program, and he actually eliminated that whole unit because for a police officer, or just I should say a law enforcement agent, the average detective really needs a lot of at least 88 hours to investigate a sexual crime, especially with children. And he eliminated that program and said that that he didn't have enough money, but when it came to this jail that we have in San Mateo County, which was unnecessary, the Board of Supervisors funded it. But we were talking a small amount of money compared to the monumental money that the Board of Supervisors approved for a jail that we really technically didn't need. So there's a real pattern with our current sheriff. You know, he looks at sexual crimes as not a big issue, and it is a big issue.
It's a huge epidemic.
Why people should be aware of what kind of person he is.
It's a huge epidemic in our country on a whole. And you'd mentioned, you know, that the local paper had, you know, printed misleading information. And I also understand in my case that I had a similar situation where the local paper was complicit with the targeting and the crimes being committed against me. And
right.
I presented this in federal court as evidence, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that this, you know, where they print the obituaries and they get most of their funding and advertising locally, it's the same thing. You know, over the years, I hear it over and over again. And then we have the mainstream media that's not reporting on any of these issues, including the 800
right.
children that are missing on missingkidsla.org, unaccounted for.
I agree.
You know, that should be in the media, the mainstream media.
It should. I've contacted, it's amazing. I'm semi-retired, basically I am retired, and I've spent so much time contacting all these organizations like Me Too, Enough, Time's Up, Enough, and it seems like the only ones that they really focus on are celebrities, you know? I mean, there are some cases that they do focus on, you know, that are not some celebrities, but it just seems like these organizations just need to really open up their wings and allow stories like this one, or not stories, issues like this one in San Mateo County, and the ones that you were involved in. Mm-hmm. You know, but it seems like it's mainly celebrities that, especially, you know, Time's Up, you know, and I've contacted, I can't tell you how many, I've contacted every imaginable celebrity, including the ones that are involved in the Time's Up and Me Too, and no response yet.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more obvious. I mean, we have the media, you know, in full panic mode right now, and I think they've contrived sound bites from Kanye West to contrive and create some sort of attention, to a failing mainstream media that the people have lost confidence in. You know,
I agree,
and that's what they're reporting on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you're right. Yeah. And well, you know, can I just bring up a situation the other day? I had to go to a car dealership to get one of those batteries. So I have a car that has one of those remote starts, and one lady, her name is Emily. I'm sorry, not Emily, Lily. She sent out 45,000 emails to San Mateo County women voters that are registered with the county of San Mateo. And I didn't get one, obviously, because I'm not a woman, but it was directed by a organization that, or I should say a company that does this for a living. And so I went to this car dealership, and I'm staying, I get the batteries, and I saw these three women. There was one older lady and two younger ladies. And I'm standing there, and I said, oh, since I've got you as a captive audience, let me tell you about Carlos G. Bolanos. And one of them was a young, you know, really young lady. She could be my daughter. She's probably in her early 20s. And she goes, oh, I know all about Carlos Bolanos. I got this email the other day. And I said, well, you might want to go on to the YouTube video and see Bolanos Monk's sex bust that was put on YouTube, and you can really get a great picture of what that email that was sent to you by Lily of San Mateo County, and you see what our current sheriff did. And there was a CBS affiliate called KPIX Channel 5 in San Francisco. Back in 2007, they had this wonderful investigative reporter named Robert Lyles, and he did a real thorough investigation about Las Vegas. And, he didn't mention that these girls were sex slaves and women, but it was put back on the Internet by another concerned citizen of San Mateo County. And from my understanding, the powers that be paid a lot of money to get rid of that video originally back in 2010. It was scrubbed off of YouTube. Now it's back on.
Well, I really appreciate, you're very brave.
Thank you.
And we need people speaking out and educating more. And I appreciate you coming on and speaking out about this. I'm going to be posting it to all of my platforms.
Thank you.
Along with I created a meme of Carlos Bolanos, and I'll include some links to the YouTubes if you want to send them over to me. Oops, wait a second. Is there a platform or a publication that you want to share with the listeners?
Well, I would say go to YouTube and watch the YouTube video that was done, like I said, by a local CBS affiliate. It's Bolanos Monk's sex bust. And then there's another one that there was a gentleman named Michael Stogner who videotaped me back in March 13th of 2018 that is also on YouTube, and it's Mark DePaula, March 13th, 2018, and addressing Board of Supervisors. And just to give you an idea why did it take so long to get this FBI information, I put in a Freedom of Information Act back in Las Vegas back in March 5th, 2015. And 2 months shy of 3 years, it arrived to my house from the Freedom of Information Act. So that's why all of a sudden it's kind of like a late start, but we didn't have the evidence about the sex minor until I received that in January of this year. I received the CD in a package that looked very suspicious from the FBI. That's just the way they do things. And I had a friend of mine who was an IT expert go over it and said, no, this is legitimate. And then I contacted the Board of Supervisors of San Mateo County and asked them if I could speak. I'd give them at least a 3-minute presentation, which is unheard of in San Mateo County. They only give you 2 minutes. And I was able to speak for 3 minutes. And that's also on YouTube.
Well, fabulous. That's awesome. Thank
you so much.
Yeah, no, this is great. I actually had Stogner. I had him on my show day before yesterday. Great man. Yeah. So he did an interview for me as well. Well, I am going to close out the show, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and hopefully, you can come back on and update me and let me know that who is newly elected in San Mateo County, and it's not Carlos Bolanos.
Well, I hope so too. Mark Melville. One of the first questions when I met Mark Melville, I said, "Were you one of the deputies that was caught in Operation Dollhouse?" And he said, "No. I started work in 2008. And he's a great man because he's a former police chief, and he's been with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, and he's been almost 10 years. So he is just a good man, and you could look him up also. But what I will do, Amanda, I will send you those two YouTube links. Is that okay to do that to you?
Yeah, go ahead and send them over to me, and I will publish them to my platforms with a link to the show as well. And I will send that to you. I'll send that over to you via text. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Godspeed, and I'm going to close out the show. Thank you for coming on. Everybody, this has been another episode of Porthole to Justice. I'm going to close out the show with Love Blade by Zeph Daniels. This has been another episode of Portal to Justice, Window to the Truth, Off the Cuff with Mark DePaula. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, stick with me just for a second. Stand by.
Stab you, you stab me. Damn self fool. Justice be served. One thing to sharpen a blade, it's another thing to use it. We love each other, though. Sharpen a blade, it's another thing to use it. Oh yeah, getting down to it, baby. Here's your last chance. Do you take it? Or do you forgive?